Happy Friday, beloveds, and welcome to my backyard. We're having a quick and dirty General Conference 2024 recap. Now, over 2 weeks, I can guarantee you that many things happened, and most of them we won't be discussing. There are resources that I will make available on the church website and the church Facebook page, and you can also speak to Mark or Margie Harabi, who were there for the event, if you'd like to know more about things like the budget, worldwide regionalization, and other issues that were discussed. This video is to discuss the big question: what happened with human sexuality? So you may know that the Book of Discipline has language in various paragraphs that was voted on in 1972 that basically states that same-sex weddings can't occur in churches, clergy can't officiate them, funding cannot go to organizations or causes having to do with LGBTQ rights, and most importantly to my mind, clergy who are openly LGBTQ+ may not be ordained or serve under appointment. For 52 years, those who believe in full inclusion of LGBTQ+ persons in the life of the church have been fighting at every general conference and for every year in between to remove this language from the Book of Discipline, going so far as to having a specially called session of General Conference in 2019. At that conference, of course, the language was kept in the Book of Discipline. However, it gave us another important tool to change the face of the denomination, although the way it turned out was not as anybody expected. In addition to keeping the language in the Book of Discipline, the 2019 special called session of General Conference introduced a temporary paragraph to the Book of Discipline that would allow churches to disaffiliate or depart from the United Methodist denomination while keeping their property and their other assets, while removing United Methodist trademarks, logos, and names from their paperwork and buildings. It was expected that churches in favor of removing the language from the Book of Discipline would use this disaffiliation paragraph to depart the church. However, as we saw in the last 3 years especially, it was churches who supported the traditional plan, as well as other churches that no longer felt connected to the wider United Methodist system, who chose to use this paragraph to disaffiliate. Now, we'll talk a little bit more about disaffiliation in a couple of minutes, but I want to tell you that all of this comes together. It's all of a piece. Following the departure of thousands of churches from the United Methodist denomination in the past 2 years, this General Conference ran a lot differently from how many people expected it to, including myself. At this past General Conference, which ran from April 23rd through May 3rd, delegates from around the world gathered, and 92% of them voted to remove all of the language from the Book of Discipline that I just described to you. Those decisions were made effective immediately at the end of General Conference, meaning that LGBTQ+ candidates who otherwise show the gifts and graces for ministry in the United Methodist Church are now eligible for commissioning and ordination as deacons and elders. It also means that pastors serving in the connection are no longer forbidden from officiating same-sex weddings and will no longer face charges for doing so. Churches that choose to host same-sex weddings on their premises will also not be subject to charges or any other disciplinary action. So what does this mean for Churchill? Well, let me tell you, friends, everything has changed and nothing has changed. These decisions have no bearing on the ongoing ministry, mission, vision, or values of Churchill United Methodist Church, except to say that we have the opportunity to be an even more open and welcoming community. This doesn't stop us from feeding people or from meeting them in their areas of deepest need. It also doesn't suddenly change the church from what it was on April 22nd. Churchill is a beautiful tapestry of diverse perspectives, theological beliefs. We are all wrestling with what we believe God's creation to be and what we believe is the position of human sexuality in the midst of all of that. And I have found that that wrestling is done with a maximum of love and compassion between everybody, regardless of their personal positions. That will continue. From a policy standpoint, it is possible that in future appointment seasons, Churchill will be approached with a candidate for appointment to the congregation who is openly LGBTQ+, whether they are partnered or not. It would be up to the members of the leadership board and staff parish committee, in conversation with the district superintendent and the potential appointee, to determine whether this is the best fit for their gifts and graces and the church's missional needs. In addition, it is now possible for the pastor serving the congregation to officiate same-sex weddings. Most pastors, myself included, will use many of the same criteria that we are already using to decide whether a wedding is within our comfort zone to officiate. Pastors will not be forced to allow same-sex weddings, just as we will not be forced to say no to them. As far as building use, there should be and will be a building use policy crafted by the pastor in conversation with the leadership board. Now, I know none of us are living under rocks, and you can see that this is very much not the parsonage. I'm leaving in a few weeks, and I will miss you all terribly. It also means that creating such a policy is not an appropriate role for me to fill. Pastor Sam will be in discernment with the leadership board when he begins his appointment on July 1st, and it will be up to them to craft, approve, and communicate a policy for the congregation. Your voices are welcome, and not just welcome, but necessary through this entire process. You are the church. We together are the church, and that transcends building, polity, and policy. So feel free to reach out to me in the next couple of weeks, to Pastor Sam when he arrives, and to any member of the leadership board with whom you feel comfortable to make sure that your feelings are heard. And if you would like to take a more active role in shaping the policy for the church, take a spin on the leadership board. I guarantee it's a lot of fun. I mean it. For meetings, it's a lot of fun. And it gives you an opportunity to see the inner workings of the church in a new and unexpected way. To do so, you can reach out either to Pastor Sam when he begins or to any member of the leadership board and just indicate that you're interested and would like to have a conversation about what that looks like. For now, though, let's cycle back to disaffiliation. What does that even mean? In the Book of Discipline, there is a paragraph that allows other organizations related to the UMC to disaffiliate if their missions no longer align with the UMC's. This is mostly related to colleges and universities. However, in 2019, there was a paragraph, number 2553, that was temporarily approved to allow churches to depart in a similar manner. In the East Ohio Conference, the process was initiated by a conversation with the church's district superintendent, at which point the church had to go through a variety of steps, including fulfilling their unfunded clergy pension liabilities and making sure that all apportionments that had been unpaid up to that point were satisfied. Once the process was complete and the church voted by a majority to disaffiliate, the church's name was put on a list with the other churches seeking to disaffiliate, and those names were voted on at the annual conferences in 2022 and 2023. That paragraph sunset in December of 2023 and is no longer a valid way for churches to leave the denomination. At this point, there is no formal process for a church to leave the denomination, except to close. Now, some of this may sound familiar to you, especially if you attended the congregational meeting that we held in August of 2021. I discussed these parts of the disaffiliation process, at least what we knew up to that point. And I also answered some other questions about what disaffiliation would look like for our congregation. I don't think I'm exaggerating to say that it would be a logistical and administrative nightmare. Disaffiliating is not as simple as saying, well, we're not going to be in the UMC anymore, we're going to go join this other church. Disaffiliation means you are taking it all on yourself. You have to pay to have the United Methodist name, logos, trademarks removed. You have to pay to reincorporate your church under a different name, even if it was something as simple as Church Hill Church. Oh yeah, we wouldn't be chum anymore, friends. Not only would you be paying for those legal matters, but it would be up to you to recruit and hire and pay your own pastor. Now, I know the churches pay the salaries now, as well as the insurance and the pension liabilities. But if you think about it, being part of a connectional system gives us group rates on health insurance and pensions that make it tons more affordable than it does for an independent church to cover these liabilities on their own. Not to mention, the appointive system in the United Methodist Church means that a church will almost never go without a pastor, even if it takes a little while to identify one. Outside the system, you're on your own to make those choices, and there's no backup for you. This is all the the businessy side of things and the polity side of things, and I could sit here being a wonk all day about it. But the reality is that disaffiliation would have a much more disastrous impact on Churchill in the relationships that would be broken, in the people who we love and who keep things running at Churchill, who would no longer be a part of that system. Several church leaders, and I have permission to name names, including Sharon Wathen, Mark and Margie Harabi, Bob Catchpole, Jane Page, and others, have all said that for a variety of reasons, they are United Methodist, and they are committed to this church in the United Methodist system. And had disaffiliation become the reality, they each would have left to seek another congregation within the United Methodist Church. Think about who I just named. I named some of the biggest doers in our congregation. So imagine with me for a moment having to do all of the logistical and legal and administrative stuff without having our biggest doers around. I know, it's terrifying, right? But here's the thing. Some people have asked why we didn't take it to a vote regardless, even if the vote would have failed. And to that, I answer the same thing that I said when someone else asked why we didn't take a vote to become a reconciling congregation. If there had been sufficient congregational desire to go through the disaffiliation process, I would have led you through it. But I expect that any disaffiliation vote, even had it passed, would have passed by a margin of maybe 50% plus one. And I doubt that it would have reached that threshold. Many churches in our connection either passed or failed by such a similar margin. And the damage that it creates in relationships is immeasurable. People leave, people feel betrayed, people no longer feel safe in an environment that was previously secure in its diversity, which is where I believe Churchill is. After I shared the details, my personal perspectives, and everything that I've shared with you here, the one person at the congregational meeting who had questions about disaffiliation to begin with said that it wasn't worth continuing forward. And nobody in the meeting had any taste for continuing down that path. We agreed, and I believe that many of you who weren't there agree with this too, that Churchill is first and foremost a loving and compassionate congregation where there is room for disagreement and differences of perspective. I pray that that continues to be the guiding ethos of the Churchill United Methodist Church, of each of you, of the entire Liberty community. I pray that as we move forward with everything and nothing having changed, that you will continue to be a community hub for deep discipleship making and a bright light shining in the community, pouring out God's love and care onto everyone you meet. I invite you, if you have questions or more comments, to attend one of our listening sessions taking place next week. The first one is Tuesday, May 28th at 10:30 in the morning. The second is Thursday, May 30th at 6 p.m., and both will be held in the youth hall on the third floor. Blessings to you and enjoy this beautiful day.